Welcome to Girl Choose Yourself, where we're trading self-doubt for self-trust and settling for soaring. I'm your host, Emer Zone, and together here we're building the confidence to create lives so deliciously bold that they scare us a little. In the best possible way, of course, because life's too damn precious and too short to stay cozy in our comfort zones. It is time to choose ourselves for life so damn fabulous and soulfully fulfilling that we have to keep pinching ourselves to check if we're dreaming. Let's do this. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Girl Choose Yourself. So who does she think she is? I wonder if you've ever said that before, or you've been in company and heard it said. Or maybe it's an internal voice. Like, who do I think I am? It's amazing how familiar that can be, that kind of questioning of who we are. Anytime we kind of step into a bigger arena, we take a chance on ourselves and we decide to step into another domain where we've not been invited necessarily, but we issue the invitation to ourselves. And today I want to look at that voice and where it comes from and how we deal with it. Because I think once you start choosing yourself and really living into a bigger creative expression for yourself, of yourself, it comes up. It comes up. I remember years ago when I was first dipping my toe really into the entrepreneurial domain, I set up an online social enterprise. And I wasn't sure what it was going to be or how to do it or anything else, but it was that first stepping out of, into sort of the spotlight where other people were going to be seeing me, taking a chance on myself and trying something new that I didn't really know how to do. And I ran that online kind of store, really. It was products by women, for women, giving back to a women's charity, and it kind of ticked a lot of boxes for me in areas of interest. But ultimately, it wasn't financially successful. It wasn't something that I wanted to continue and do, and I shut it down about 3 years into it. But I learned an awful lot from it. But one of the things that I remember from that experience was like, oh, I'm now in this more public domain, and friends and family and the acquaintances and people are seeing me doing this thing and it felt risky. And I remember one time, and it was some family member looking through my website when I was around and kind of for sport, taking out somewhere where I had a typo in my copy and so it was a little bit comical how it came out, how it was expressed, and kind of pulling this up on their phone and kind of laughing about it in my company. And I was like, wow, interesting. Why didn't you just send me an email and tell me, hey, I found a mistake on your site, maybe you'd like to fix it? But it was sort of, that was a who do you think you are, sort of a little bit of chastising, ridiculing me. You stepped out of where I normally see you and maybe where I think you belong. And so it's risky. It's risky, this choosing ourselves, emotionally risky, because people are going to have things to say about it, and it can feel uncomfortable. It can definitely feel uncomfortable. And it is like a muscle that we need to build. And I think particularly as women, when we try maybe new and ambitious things, when we step into an area where people aren't used to seeing us, it can feel particularly risky, and we can meet not, it's even more uncomfortable than hearing it from people who we don't know is like hearing it from people who we do know, and also hearing it from other women. Like, who does she think she is? Because it can be threatening for friends or peers or acquaintances to see us taking a risk and kind of saying, do you know what, I want more. And it almost feels like there's this broader context in society of trying to control women's appetites, women wanting to take up more space in the world is generally not really overtly encouraged. And I think that all plays into the messages that we have sort of taken on ourselves and that kind of live within us. And I felt that when I was beginning my journey, and I feel it still, and I see it mirrored in society when I see women who have a lot of attention and spotlight on them, and they come in for different types of critiques than their male counterparts might. And just thinking about a few examples, maybe I think Taylor Swift is, sometimes labeled difficult for standing up to industry practices, or called calculating when she's very business savvy. And, there's the classic ones when you think about prominent female politicians where they are faced with the kind of likability trap, that they're not likable, that they're too ambitious. And ambition is sort of seen as a negative. So I think a lot of us sort of subconsciously absorb that, or maybe not subconsciously, we're just aware of it. So it feels much more risky to sort of take a chance on ourselves and to move into a domain and, put the spotlight on ourselves and say, I'm going to take a chance and do this thing and do this creative expression, or take up this new identity that I want to grow into, that I want to learn about and just try out. And I found that too when I published my first book, The Little Book of Good Enough. And I remember I was working with this company, and they send you're about to launch the book, and they sent me some little kind of swag stuff. And one of the things was like this coffee cup with author written on it. And I was going, well, I've written a book, but I don't know whether I can quite call myself an author. Like, who does she think she is? It's amazing. You can be somebody who's written a book or two books, and you can find it difficult to say you're an author. So you have to, for me, I feel that it's, okay, I acknowledge that that's new territory and it feels a little bit tricky for me to own, and that's just the way it's going to be. It's just going to feel like that, and that I'm going to have to become more comfortable with it by just repeating it to myself and owning it. I think you have to claim the territory. And when I was writing my second book, Choose Yourself, I came across, and I talk about it in the book, I came across this, and I have it in front of me now, an old school report. And it was the date on it is the 30th of June, 1977. So a few years ago. I'm 55, do the math. I can't do the math actually in my head, but do the math. I was pretty young. And here is the comment from the section on English. And it says, excellent. Excellent reading and spelling. Written work coming on very well. Has a flair for writing, which should be encouraged. And I read that, and I had no recollection of ever being told that I was a good writer, or that was an area that I should maybe focus more on. It just disappeared from whatever little flicker of attention that it got when I was that young. And I suspect for you too, there are areas that you were interested in that you received sort of positive feedback on when you were younger that were of interest to you, and they just laid buried and you've forgotten about them. And as we all do, as we kind of get into the habit of being ourselves in the world, following on this expected path of, you go to school, maybe you go to college, you get a job, and you follow this pathway, and you do a lot of what you think you should do, and it feels good for a while until it doesn't, until you get this kind of niggle that, what am I missing? Is this all there is? And if you are at an age or a stage, and that can be young and bloody old, where you say, I'm committed to living as much as I can a life where I minimize the regrets that I'm going to have at the end of my life. And that really takes being quite brave when it comes to, who do you think you are? It means that you choose to investigate that in a very open-minded and open-hearted way. Who do I think I am? Is the I that I am living and expressing right now in my life, is that truly who and all I wish to be and become? Or is there more in me that I would like to bring to light during my time on this planet? It's a serious, I think that's a really, really serious inquiry. Who do I think I am? Who do I take myself to be? And often, the who do I take myself to be is not who we are. It's an awful lot less than who we truly are. Often we've taken ourselves to be people who aren't that smart, who can't accomplish things, who aren't very persistent or resilient or disciplined or a whole load of other things. And I don't think that's often who we've taken ourselves to be, who isn't who we are capable of being. So I really think something really interesting happens when we stop sort of pushing down our desire for wanting more. It's kind of like if you imagine, you're in a swimming pool and maybe there's like a one of those flotation things, whether it's a ball or something else, and you're trying to push it below the surface to deny what's really there. It feels like that. You can do it for a while, but it takes effort, and it's not very pleasant, and it's not very easeful. And surely there's a better way. Surely there's a better way. I think we need to be grateful for where we are. I think that's a very positive practice that opens us up. I don't think that wanting more precludes us from expressing and feeling grateful for what we do have. I think gratitude is an important part on the journey. And I don't think that we should mistake this kind of message of you should be grateful for what you have as gratitude, that often that's settling. Because if you have some pull within you that feels like there's got to be more, and you're feeling a little niggle within you, then you can be grateful for what you do have and explore what more you could invite into your life. So let's talk about what this actually looks like from a practical perspective. Because it's one thing to understand that, where this voice is coming from, the who do I think I am, or who do you think you are? But what do we actually do when we hear that voice? Whether it's coming from others, as kind of I was hearing indirectly from one member of my family when I was being ridiculed for something that I'd done, or whether it's, the voice in your own head. And here are I'm just going to share with you maybe 3 powerful ways that you can respond when you hear that message to kind of stay small, stay in your lane and not expand. And the first thing is name it to tame it. The first step is really recognizing the voice for what it actually is. When you hear that "who does she think she is" message, whether it's that direct criticism or that subtle suggestion to, be realistic, pause and name it like, there it is. There it is. That's the message that says I should stay small. And just naming it takes away some of its power. Because once you see it for what it is, you can't unsee it. You can't unsee it. And you start to realize this isn't about you not being enough. This is about others being uncomfortable with your growth. So the second thing that you can do is to answer that with action. So instead of defending or explaining yourself, you take one small action that reinforces that inherent right that you have as a creative human being to want more. So maybe it's simple actions like you speak up in a meeting, even when you feel pressure to stay quiet. You share your view, your opinion. Maybe you send the email pitching your idea. The one that somebody else might say, they're never going to listen to you, or that's never going to fly. You send the email anyway. One small action. Maybe you set that boundary, even when it makes other people feel uncomfortable. When you're looking to expand into more of yourself and choose yourself, there are going to be people in your environment that aren't going to be too happy about that. And if you have any people-pleasing tendencies, it's going to be particularly tricky, and you're going to need to set these boundaries. So maybe it's that setting the boundary, saying no, even when it feels uncomfortable. That's taking up more space. Take up more space without apologizing. So each small action is a way of answering, who does she think she is? Or who do I think I am? When you're not quite believing. And next, you want to create evidence. So this is the third thing. I love this. Because so often, because of the way our minds work, we focus on the negative messages. Like the negative, like, who do you think you are? What are you doing? You can write a book? You can start a business? You can get that promotion? We focus on that because we're kind of hardwired with the negativity bias to kind of self-protect and to put our attention there. So really we need to create evidence that contradicts the limiting voice. And it's like a proof list, I often do a top 10 of, maybe times when I've surprised myself, when things have gone better than I imagined that they would, or that I expected that they would. This is something that I often, really, with my kids, I'm a parent of 3 kids, when I'm sort of parenting just generally and they're having challenges and I'm looking for them to really choose themselves and just have, to be optimistic, expecting the best, expect a positive outcome. And when something happens, when they were stressing over, oh my God, it's never going to work, and then I get them to a place where they take the chance and they take the action, and then it turns out well, and they're in such a much better mood than they were before they did the thing, I always get them to pause and feel into that, and to remember how their mind and their thoughts were lying to them and telling them all sorts of BS about how it wouldn't work out, they couldn't do it, they shouldn't try, and all the rest of it. So I think it's so important, because of the way our minds work. We forget the positive stuff. They say that our minds are like Teflon for the positives, that we really want to hang on to them. And so you have to take action to capture them. So write it down. Moments you've chosen yourself, you've taken that chance on yourself, and it worked out. And maybe also just kind of reflecting on where you are today compared to how you used to be, or where you used to be, and what you've achieved and how you behave. Noting that down and kind of saying, oh, actually, I'm much more outspoken in these situations where I normally sat quiet and didn't give my opinion. I contribute much more. I've learned so much more in this business area than I used to know. Whatever it is, capture it and write it down. Make it your proof list, or whatever you want to call it. In my first book, I call this Damn I'm Fabulous. Damn I'm Fabulous list. Call it whatever the hell you want. Make it fabulous. I'm trying not to curse here. And that's difficult for me sometimes. Make it bloody amazing, okay? You really have to own it. You have to own it, because nobody's going to give it to you. You have to really claim it. So capture those positives and write them down, because there are going to be so many more moments when our mind goes to the who do you think you are narrative. And we need to be sort of pre-armed with these kind of reflections and recollections and kind of hard evidence of bloody amazing things that we've already done and achieved. And something that I like to lean into when I'm putting something like this together, when I'm putting together this evidence, is, lean on your best friends, the ones that really celebrate you, and be careful here about who you ask, because you may spend an awful lot of time with somebody, but then they may not be capable of being someone who would celebrate your success. And that is hard to admit and to acknowledge when you're thinking about the people that are around you. So choose wisely and who you ask here. But if you're finding it difficult to lean in and kind of think about the great things that you've achieved and done, and how you are, and your qualities that really are such, shiny, sparkly ways of being, that you can't sometimes see yourself as being a real asset. Speak to somebody who's close in your circle, who's a dear friend, and ask them to remind you of how damn fabulous you are, because we forget this. So lean on them and ask them. And what's really powerful is that every time that you choose yourself, in small and big ways, you're creating more evidence to add to this list. It's not just a list, it's a goddamn file. It should be big and fat and juicy, and you need to own it. And it becomes such a powerful resource when the inevitable doubts arises, when you're walking this path of choosing yourself and saying, listen, I'm not here to be on the sidelines. I'm not here to make up the numbers. And you damn well aren't here to make up the numbers. And lots of us behave like we are, because it seems like we need to be anointed into some, sacred sect of the special people to be able to go for it. And going for it means different things for different people. What I consider going for it for me personally is going to be very different for what you want, what you aspire to, what's going to light you up. But everybody deserves to live into the full expression of themselves. I believe it's why we're here. So if you want a little bit of podcast homework, I would love if you would take that on. Name it to tame it when it arises. Okay? Answer with action when it does. Small steps, speaking up, next obvious action in choosing yourself in the moment and creating this folder of evidence of your damn fabulousness. And you call it something bloody amazing. Okay? This is what I want you to remember. That voice questioning, who do you think you are? It shows up most loudly when we're stepping outside the comfort zone and when we're ready for a breakthrough, right before we're ready to expand, right before you're about to choose yourself in a bigger way. So the next time you hear it, I want you to just smile and say, must be on to something good. Something juicy, exciting, and big is on the horizon and coming my way. Okay? I have it here somewhere. Yeah, I want to read you this. Just to remind you, this is from Marianne Williamson, and it's probably very familiar to you. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light and not our darkness that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I? Who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? And it goes on, your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I look forward to the next time. Take care. Be well. Thank you so much for choosing to spend this time with me today. If you enjoy the episode and it resonated with you, please consider subscribing and share this podcast with someone you know who would benefit from the message. If you'd like to take things a step further, you'll find some free and paid resources in the show notes. And until next time, in the unlikely event that no one has told you this yet today, let me have the profound honor of reminding you that you are truly magnificent and the world is a far better and brighter place because you are here with us all. See you next time.